Welcome to the Rotary Club of Tulsa. Thank you all for being here. We have a really special treat for you. I know you're going to enjoy. So I'm pretty darn excited, and I'm just glad that all of you are here to experience President Teddy Roosevelt. And I also want to thank our barbershop quartet. They will be performing for us in just a minute. They're the Tulsa Tones. And it started as a Valentine's Day project, and these guys stayed together through a day of singing Valentines for people. So now they're still doing it. And in fact, they perform at Lights On at Utica Square, so we'll hear them in just a minute. So they're going to do our song, and Tom Wolfe is on piano. Visitor introductions by Chad Newens, and our invocation will be given by Darren Walkup. So now, Tulsa Tones.
Do you want us before the prayer or?
After the prayer.
Okay.
You know, sometimes you get too excited. Sorry, Darren.
All right, join me in prayer. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving, and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise to his name. For the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. Amen.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free, land of the free, land of the free, and the home of the brave?
I'd like to say play ball, but let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
But, you know, when you're here all together, you got food, and you got music, and you got the president. It's just a great and wonderful day, right? And any day is just a wonderful day to have. So we're glad to be here, and we're glad that you're here.
On a wonderful day like today, I defy any cloud to appear in the sky, dare any raindrop to plop in my eye. On a wonderful day like today, on a wonderful morning like this, when the sun is as big as a yellow balloon, even the sparrows are singing in tune. On a wonderful morning like this, oh, zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay, my, oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine heading my way. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay, Mr. Bluebird on my shoulder. It's the truth, it's actual, everything is satisfactual. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay, wonderful feeling, wonderful day. Yes, it's a good day for singing a song, and it's a good day for moving along. Yes, it's a good day, how could anything go wrong? A good day from morning till night. Yes, it's a good day for paying your bills, and it's a very good day for curing your ills. So take a deep breath and throw away your pills. 'Cause it's a good, absolutely super special zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay, on a wonderful, 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 wonderful day like today.
Well, I'm happy. Is everyone happy now? The Rotary Club of Tulsa would like to welcome all of our members, our guests, and visiting Rotarians today. I'm going to start out with the visitors. When I call your name and the name of your host Rotarian, please stand for a moment. Let's see if I can mess these all up. Let's see. Betsy Fisher is the guest of Jan Johnson. Let's see. Dennis Adloff and Nancy Shelton are the guests of Linda Adloff. Vicki Adams and Steve Adams are the guests of Karen Keith. Charles Groom is the guest of Jack McGlumpy. Bonnie Webster is the guest of Darrell Webster. Regina Tisdale is the guest of Marlene Livaday. That's the one I was most worried about. Did I get it right? Victor Keene is a guest of Martin Keating. And Mike Tidwell is the guest of Greg Keck. Welcome, everybody. We also have some visiting Rotarians. We have Tom Clark from Sunrise, past district governor. Hey, Tom. Harlan Pinkerton from Sand Springs. Paul Shields from Tulsa Sunrise. Gary Hargrove from Sand Springs. George Payton from Sand Springs. And this is a hybrid, John Olson from Southside, who has Za Olson as his guest. Thank you. Welcome, everybody.
And we have one more guest. It's my assistant who has to put up with me day in and day out. Ella McKenzie, thank you for being here. You better stand up. Our Rotary sponsors this week, John Stava Building Corporation, and we encourage you to do business with your fellow Rotarians. Please thank all of today's sponsors and all of our volunteers. And Trey Walling, he's got more big news for us today. You're going to like this.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians, friends, and guests. This may come as a huge shock, but as a child, I was a little rambunctious and had a little more energy than most. My parents decided that the perfect way to channel that energy was to put me in sports. I grew up playing every sport imaginable, and as such became a big sports buff and just kind of consumed by all things athletic. Occasionally in life, you get the opportunity to meet someone whom you've looked up to as a young athlete, someone who set an example, someone who played to the top of their ability and created new standards within their sport. Today, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Regina Tisdale. Regina is the wife of the late, great Wayman Tisdale, Oklahoma basketball superstar and legend. Regina is the chairperson for the Wayman L. Tisdale Foundation and is also an advisory board member of the Access Sports Wayman Tisdale Award. Regina has a very special announcement for us regarding the 2014 IBA Awards. At this time, I would like you to give Regina a big Rotary welcome and get ready for the announcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Well, it's my pleasure to announce this year's keynote speaker, Coach Sherry Cole. She's the University of Oklahoma head women's basketball coach. I'll give you a little information about Sherry. In her 18th season as the head coach of the University of Oklahoma women's basketball team, Sherry Cole is considered one of the top collegiate coaches in the nation. A native of Helton, Oklahoma, Cole spent her collegiate career playing for Oklahoma University's basketball team, where she was University of Oklahoma, Christian University's Oklahoma basketball team, and she was an academic All-American and graduated summa cum laude. That's very cool. She began her coaching career at Norman High School in Oklahoma, amassing a 147-40 record, including 2 state championships. After 7 years and amazing success at high school level, Coach Cole accepted the coaching position at Oklahoma in 1996. Sherry Cole turned a struggling program into a national contender in a short period of time. Since 1996, the Sooners have won 6 regular Big 12 titles, 4 Big 12 tournament titles, and 14 consecutive appearances in the NCAA tournament, where her teams advanced to the Sweet 16 or beyond 9 times and played in 3 NCAA Final Fours. Wow. Sherry Cole has been recognized nationally for her achievements by serving as head coach for Team USA at the 2013 World University Games in Russia. The Cole-led team earned the gold medal by defeating Russia on their home floor in the championship game. Sherry Cole was recently the recipient of the 2011 United Nations NGO Positive Peace Award in the coaching category for her commitment to community involvement. The 2011 Abe Lemons Paul Hassan Award for Sports Excellence and the 2012 World Neighbors Dignity Award. Okay, that's just a little bit of, her accolades, and of course, on a personal level, Sherry, what I noticed about Sherry and what I've encountered is she is a wonderful coach, but bigger than that, she's a wonderful friend, mother, and wife. I've seen her with her children, and I see her with her team. And in some cases in college, those children, they need all of those things, and Sherry encompasses all of them. And if I can get you guys to turn to the screens, there's a video that we'd like you to see.
Her quote today was, "Don't mistake activity for achievement. Don't just come in here and punch the clock and say, okay, we practiced for 2 hours today, it's good. You need to really work on something and get better in those 2 hours and have fun doing it at the same time."
Let's achieve today, all right? How many days till the Final Four? Let's do this, baby, let's do this, right here. This whole week is gonna go really, really fast, but it's just a build-up of those fundamental things that we have to do. From the moment we leave this room, every single day, have a sense of urgency, have a sense of purpose. You guys get out and run. See if you can get there first. Can you arrive before the other guys? That's your sole objective. The ball will find you. That's our job.
It's the little things that lead up to what you really want in the end.
Everybody's getting better every day, and we're working towards getting back to the NCAA tournament and making a run through there. So every day really matters.
And we wouldn't be practicing if we didn't want to get better.
How good are our assistant coaches, by the way? Really doing a great job, great job.
My class is the only one who hasn't cut down the net so far, so that's our goal for this year.
We got to get that. So at least for the seniors, I know that's like a big motivator for us. Like, we got to do this.
It's imperative at this point. You don't want to be the only class to come through that's not been able to cut down some sort of net, whether it's a Big 12 championship or Final Four. To achieve that, we just need to be focused and prepared every day.
Go, Maddie! Slow it down, Maddie!
A lot of the quotes and stuff that we have every day for like the thought emphasis, you don't really get anywhere else that I know of, at least. It's always something that comes out of her mouth that just kind of inspires you and motivates you, either on the court or just in life in general, to be a better person.
It's an honor to coach kids who are as locked in as you were today. You were locked in on everything that we did. Never, ever did you go away You were trying to do the right thing, and that is an honor. It is a privilege, and we're going to win a bunch of ball games if that continues. Great job today. Great job. Woo-hoo.
Together, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Together.
Woo. You know she's going to be incredible. And Regina, thank you so much for coming here today. It's so nice to see you. And Trey, keep up the good work. IBA's going to be a huge hit again this year. So, committee meetings today, Rotary Foundation, room 233, and youth activities, the front of Thomas Hall. Of course, that's the four-way speech competition. Luann will be leading that. In other announcements, cards are on your table for extending condolences to Rotarian Jim Aiken on the passing of his wife Paula on Saturday after a 13-month battle with cancer. Services will be at Holy Family Cathedral at 10 a.m. Saturday, November 2nd. Please keep the Aiken family in your prayers for their comfort and strength. And cards are also on your table for extending well wishes to Rotarian and past District Governor LeVan Kelly. LeVan fell recently and had to be hospitalized in St. John's for several days. He's currently being treated at a rehab facility in Houston. And I'm sure he'd very much appreciate receiving your well wishes. And I want to extend a special congratulations to the Muskogee Rotary Club as they celebrate their club centennial this week. And as many of you know, Muskogee was our sponsoring club, and we owe them a lot for their role in launching our club. Muskogee Club is recognizing the occasion with the dedication of a centennial clock in the town square on Thursday, and their centennial speaker will be this gentleman, President Roosevelt. And they also have a banquet on Friday night. So it's going to be big doings, and I know a few of us are going down there for that. We also have one new member to present today. Rodney Robards. Please introduce our newest member, Vic Robards. I think there's a relationship there.
Present my dad, my best man at my wedding, and my best friend to Rotary this morning, or this afternoon. We've known each other for a while, I'd say. And I know he's going to honor the four-way test and be a great member to Rotary. It's taken me 18 years to get him here. Took the help of High Camp and Bob Reed and a couple other guys to twist his arm. But he's coming in as a retired physician, and it's with an honor that I present him with his pen and the four-way test.
Yay. Vic, we are absolutely thrilled to have you. Thank you so much. We look forward to working with you over the years. And thank you, Judge Hicks, for doing the orientation today. And project announcements, Tom Klinda, can you come on down?
Thank you, President Karen, and we look forward to the big celebration next week for you. I believe it's your first anniversary of your 59th
Yes.
birthday.
Yes. Be sweet.
Yes, you heard the big IBA announcement. The deadline for the special early bird discount for club members only ends tomorrow. So complete these two forms. We have forms on the table. Sign these, complete these. Get them in by tomorrow. Pay no money now. That's right, no money now. It's like a special department store layaway program. You don't have to pay till next year by January 31st. So this is a great opportunity to get that special priority table location, organize a group of 10 Rotarians, and get your forms in by tomorrow. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. And we have a couple of Rotarians that I'm so happy to see here today, Jerry Barrientos and Melissa Clark. Thank you for being here today. So glad to see you back. Okay, now, you guys know who our Rotarian of the Day is. He's Martin Keating. He's Sarge. He joined our club in February 1995. He's the founder and board member of 3D Icon Corporation. He's a Club Foundation Fellow and a Paul Harris Fellow. Please welcome our Rotarian of the Day, Martin Keating, better known as Sarge.
Thank you, President Karen. This Sarge you're referring to, a certain Sarge had planned to be here today, but the thought of being in the presence of the Commander-in-Chief proved overwhelming, and he's under a doctor's care at this moment. Our speaker was born in New York City on October the 27th, 1858. Graduated Phi Beta Kappa and magna cum laude from Harvard, he was elected the youngest member of the New York General Assembly. In the years to follow, he became a cattle rancher in the Dakota Territory and ran unsuccessfully for the New York mayorship. He served as the United States Civil Service Commissioner, President of the Police Commission of New York City, Assistant Secretary of the United States Navy, Colonel of the 1st United States Volunteer Cavalry, Governor of New York, Vice President, and President of the United States, all by the age of 42. Father of 6 children, the author of more than 30 books, a big game hunter, a leading ornithologist, and founder of Boone and Crockett, the nation's first fair hunting and conservation organization. During his presidency, he declared some 230 million acres of national parks, national forests, wildlife refuges, and national monuments. He was, indeed, the great conservation president. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the 26th President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt.
Hooray! Isn't that bully fun? Well, Sarge, Mr. Keating, President Keith, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so very delighted to be with you, not only today, but what a wonderful afternoon we had yesterday. Now, Commissioner Keith, keeping up with her is quite a task. We visited yesterday afternoon the wonderful Tulsa Botanical Gardens, hosted there by Mr. McGraw. And we visited wonderfully at the library, the Hardesty Library, last evening. What a wonderful audience of grandparents and parents and children. Today, what a wonderful honor my friend Thomas Edison would consider it to be. The wonderful Eagles at Thomas Edison High School this morning. They, with their bright faces and inquiring minds. And here in Tulsa, I've been recognized. Even here at Rotary this afternoon, you've greeted me warmly. Hello, Teddy, and good afternoon, Mr. President. Some, like Sarge and a young lieutenant at the ROTC this morning, they knew that I like to be called by my old military title, Colonel, from my brief time in the United States Army in the Spanish-American War. All of those greetings, historically accurate, stand in such stark contrast to my recent visit to Theodore Roosevelt High School in Los Angeles, California. The students there are the Rough Riders. My pictures and quotations adorn each and every hallway and classroom. But when I arrived there, so attired, one young man spotted me, pointed at me, and told his friends, "Look, there's the Monopoly dude." Why, if they knew their history as well as you and the Eagles at Thomas Edison, they would have known I was the anti-Monopoly dude, the great trust buster, in which case my apologies to Ms. Rockefeller here today. Sorry about that little dust-up with the Standard Oil Company back in the day. Well, I did do some trust busting. Some of those men that I called the malefactors of great wealth on Wall Street, they didn't care much for this idea of the federal government trifling in the private interest of business. When Kermit, my son, and I left New York Harbor that morning in March of 1909, the inauguration of Taft having been concluded, when we left New York Harbor, my great nemesis, J.P. Morgan, he in his Manhattan library, surrounded by his wealthy friends and his European art collection, he toasted to our African hunting venture thusly: to the Lions. May they do their job. Well, Mr. Adams, my friend from Boone and Crockett, who's given me this fine Boone and Crockett booklet, I assure you, like Mr. Morgan, a Winchester lever-action .40-05 is good medicine for a lion. Well, indeed, I'm delighted to be with you here today, and thank you for the acknowledgement of my legacy for conservation. You're doing wonderful work here in Oklahoma on this issue of conservation, the preservation of our green spaces, the open spaces where we can take our children and grandchildren out to show them that they've got the right stuff in them. Why, even one of my national game preserves, Wichita Mountain Game Preserve, dates from my time in the presidency. And it's a wonder that I am associated with the great open spaces of the western states, with the national parks and the national forests. For you may know I'm the only president born in New York City, New York. And when I was a small boy growing up there, far from living the strenuous life that I later lived and preached, I was a very weak and sickly child. I had asthma. Any of you who has asthma or has asthma amongst your family or friends, you know what a terrible disease that is, to see a small child choking for breath and for life itself. Today, thankfully, the asthmatic child has the inhaler to restore breath, hopefully, quickly. In my day, we had no such medicine. In my day, the treatment for asthma was worse than the disease. Can you imagine giving a small asthmatic boy a cigar to smoke? The idea was coughing would stimulate my breathing. I was given bitter black coffee to drink, again as a stimulant, and I was given ipecac syrup to drink. Oh, now I hear by your groans and see by your grimaces and by the white atop your mountains, you're of a generation that knows ipecac syrup. The school children know it no longer. I share with them that ipecac syrup is something that you drink in order to see your lunch. Twice. Unpleasant memories for me to this very day. When I was a boy of 11, my father, Theodore Roosevelt, the greatest man I ever knew, the man for whom I'm named, he called me into his study for a heart-to-heart. And he said, Theodore, you have the mind, but you have not the body. And without the aid of the body, the mind cannot go as far as it otherwise should. It is hard work and drudgery, but you must make your body. I said, Father, I shall. And I set out to make my body doing calisthenics. I lifted weights, I swam, I rowed, I worked on the parallel bars and on the rings. I even took boxing lessons in the classical manner. And I built my body. And it does appear I may have overdone it just a bit. But when I was your president, at 5'8" and 220 solid pounds, as I stand before you today, I was but a mere feather of a man compared to my successor, William Howard Taft. At times, President Taft tipped the scales at over 350 pounds. When I was your president and Taft our governor in the Philippines, we had word that Taft was in ill health with fever, perhaps near death. My Secretary of War, Elihu Root, cabled to the Philippines inquiring as to Taft's health, and thankfully Taft cabled back. Health fine. Rode horse 20 miles this morning. Root cabled back. How's the horse? We've spoken of celebrating centennials. We acknowledge the centennial of the 1912 presidential campaign during our most recent presidential election. Of course, again, you know your history, though I'd recruited Taft when I returned from Africa and Europe. When I toured the country, I saw that Taft had made a mess of everything. He'd broken several personal promises to me, fired our national forester, Gifford Pinchot, in the great Pinchot-Ballinger controversy, and returned my Republican Party and our federal government back over to those men that I called the malefactors of great wealth. So early in that year, I told the press that I was stripped to the waist, healthy as a bull moose, and that my hat was in the ring. The first time that phrase from pugilism was used to declare a candidacy. And out across the country I campaigned, and I won 8 of the 12 primaries held by the Republican Party that spring. I beat Taft in his home state of Ohio. Senator Bob LaFollette, the progressive of Wisconsin, won 2 of the other 4 contests. President Taft was not popular with the grassroots of Lincoln's Republican Party, the shopkeeper, the mechanic, the farmer. But at the Republican convention in Chicago that summer, the Republican bosses stole the nomination for Taft. By the way, the good people of Oklahoma will understand me. Not the first nor the last time that something politically was stolen in Chicago. Roosevelt delegates rose out of that convention and marched out shouting, "Thou shalt not steal! Thou shalt not steal!" We returned weeks later as the great Progressive Party convention. My nomination was seconded by Jane Addams, the great social reformer of Chicago's Whole House. I broke with precedent. I addressed a nominating convention. I said, "We stand at Armageddon and we battle for the Lord. Onward, Christian soldier" was our theme song, and some say the Ten Commandments and the Golden Rule was our platform. And out across the country I campaigned. Now, of course, Governor Wilson of New Jersey was the Democratic nominee. President Taft carried the Republican standard, and he could not run a Rose Garden campaign. He was encouraged to go and make speeches throughout the country. And before one friendly Republican audience in New York City, the president was preparing to make his remarks. He was being hosted by the Republican senator and wit, Chauncey Depew. And Senator Depew had some fun at the president's expense before making the introduction. He saw his friend and patted the president on the president's enormous tummy and inquired of the president. He said, "Mr. President, is it a boy or a girl?" President Taft didn't miss a beat. He responded, "If it's a boy, I will name him Virtue. If it's a girl, I will call her Integrity. If, however, it's simply hot air and gas, I will call it Chauncey Depew." Well, of all of the accomplishments of the Roosevelt administration, no work was more important, no work paid greater dividends for this nation than the building of the Panama Canal. You know, we were founded as an Atlantic nation, but from the founding to my presidency, we'd filled in the continent. We were equally now a Pacific nation, having annexed Hawaii with the protectorates in the Philippines and Guam. Our future, I felt, was in the Pacific. And when that canal was opened in 1914, it cut to 1/3 the amount of time necessary to move our great naval assets from one ocean to the other. That which had been a vision of mankind since the time of Balboa, 4 centuries before, became a reality because of the can-do spirit of the American people and the dedication that they showed. And I think that domestically, while the Panama Canal did wonders to help maintain our sovereignty, provide for the future defense of the nation, domestically, I can have no greater pride, no greater honor than in knowing that I was the president that signed the legislation that added the 46th star to the United States flag. Bully for Oklahoma. Of course, Oklahoma and Indian territories, as they were for the first 6.5 years of my administration, produced tremendous men who fought in the Spanish-American War, many of whom enlisted in the Rough Riders, the 1st United States Volunteer Cavalry. That was the war that helped me to rise like a rocket in politics. I was an assistant secretary of the Navy in the McKinley administration, and I saw that war with Spain over Cuba was imminent. And when that war finally came, I resigned my position at the Navy and took up my lieutenant colonelcy in the Rough Riders. I was not originally the colonel, the commanding officer. I told the War Department that I'd only been a member of the New York National Guard, and I thought I might require a week or two of combat experience in order to lead the regiment. I asked that my friend, the White House surgeon, Colonel Leonard Wood, he for whom the great Army fort in Missouri is named, he had already won the Medal of Honor fighting the Apache in the Southwest. I asked that he be the commanding officer and I the second in command. And Colonel Wood mustered the men in San Antonio as men reported from Arizona and New Mexico territories, from here in Oklahoma and Indian Territory. I worked with the quartermaster's office in Washington, D.C. to see the men properly requisitioned, most importantly with the same Krag rifle with which the regulars fought, that we might be stationed in the front lines with the regulars. And, of course, I went to the quartermaster's office and asked for uniforms. Well, this was May. And as May was closer to July 1st than January 1st, it was the standard procedure in the Army to issue woolen uniforms for the winter. I said, "Man, we're headed to Cuba. I need khakis." The quartermaster general told me that he had that office working in fine order before the war came along and ruined everything. Now, of course, in addition to those men of the West and the South, the Rough Riders also had men from Harvard and Yale and Princeton, my friends from the gentlemen's clubs of New York and Chicago and Washington, D.C. You might wonder how these Western men and Eastern fellows got along, whether or not we were like oil and water. One story illustrates how well the men blended. So many of the Eastern men took up jobs as orderlies and cooks, simple privates, where in previous wars the breeding might have given them officerships. They would do anything they could to get into the war. After I'd arrived in San Antonio, Mrs. Roosevelt and I occasionally enjoying the mango ice cream at the Mango Hotel. One of my New York friends came late and reported for duty. He came from the train station wearing his Sunday suit and his straw hat. He inquired at the stables as to my whereabouts, where two Western cowboys, thinking that they had their next mark, winked at one another. They had been spending the morning breaking horses for the regiment. One horse remained unbroken, unlike the leg of a cowboy that horse had thrown earlier in the morning. And when the cowboys thought they had their mark in this Eastern dude, they said, "Colonel Roosevelt is on yonder hill, but you may have this horse to go and find him," giving the Eastern fellow the unbroken stallion. My Eastern friend grabbed the reins of that horse, jumped into its saddle, rode off successfully to find me, controlling that wild steed. Those cowboys' chins were atop their boots. They had just attempted to have fun at the expense of the United States amateur riding champion. We left from San Antonio. The trains took us along the Gulf states of the Deep South. And how it did my Knickerbocker heart good when we would stop the train and water the horses and rest the men. Out from those southern villages would come Southern belles, carrying buckets of coffee and milk and trays of baked goods, where but a generation and a half before their parents and grandparents had been fighting to tear the Union asunder. Now the gray and the blue united beneath the red, white, and blue. The commanding officer of all cavalry in the war in Cuba was the old Confederate General Fighting Joe Wheeler of Alabama, he who in his mid-60s resigned from Congress to lead the cavalry on the front lines in Cuba. Again, you know your story. We were in Tampa, men and train cars piled atop one another, and one newspaper wag wrote, the United States had an army of occupation, and they were occupying the veranda of a grand hotel in Tampa. But finally, the word came, and if I may, the word came that indeed we would leave Tampa for Cuba. Sad the day was, 1/3 of the Rough Riders would be left behind for lack of transport. Grown men cried for not getting into the war. Worse yet, all of the horses for the enlisted men would be left behind. Only the officers could bring their horses to Cuba. When we left Tampa Harbor aboard the transport ship Yucatan, to the sound of 4-string quartets wafting from shipboard to shipboard, we toasted the regimental toast of the Rough Riders. To the officers, may the war last long enough that we're all either wounded, killed, or promoted. And we were. In Cuba, the Rough Riders took more casualties than any other regiment, any other volunteer regiment. 20% of the enlisted men wounded or killed, 30% of the officers. Not for lack of training or ability, but for the fact that we always rushed to the sound of the guns. Now, when the troops first landed, we were let down in deep water off the coast of Daiquiri, a village for which the rum drink is named. And we went ashore. We routed the Spanish first at Las Guasimas. General Wheeler always put himself in the front lines, but during that routing of the Spanish at Las Guasimas, we began to suspect, accurately so, that General Wheeler was beginning to suffer from the early effects of yellow fever. For in the excitement of the battle and in the early stages of his fever, General Wheeler was heard to shout out, "After 'em, boys! We got the damn Yankees on the run!" It was time for General Wheeler to go to sickbay for a while. He would leave the hospital and be back on the lines on July 1st, 1898, the day when I had my crowded hour at the foot of what in history we know as San Juan Hill. We called it Kettle Hill, for there was a giant sugar refining kettle atop that hill. Amongst the ablest of my troops was Troop A, comprised primarily of men of Prescott, Arizona territory. The captain was the mayor of Prescott, Bucky O'Neill. If you visit Yavapai County in Arizona, the statue on the north side of the courthouse there is said to be of Bucky O'Neill. Rallying his troops at the foot of Kettle Hill, as we awaited orders and as the Spanish Mauser did terrible things to the men of Troop A and the other troops. Bucky O'Neill walked amongst the soldiers while they were down in the tall grass. One corporal shouted out to Captain Bucky O'Neill, "Captain, aren't you afraid to lose your life?" And Captain O'Neill stood proudly and said, "Soldier, the Spanish bullet has not yet been made to kill me." Those were the last words that Captain O'Neill spoke as a Spanish bullet went through the front and out of the back of his throat. When he fell, I knew that his young lieutenant, Lieutenant Frank France, I knew that he was the man to take control of the troop, and it was he who helped to lead Troop A and the others as we rushed up Kettle Hill and routed the Spanish therefrom. I wonder if you know that Frank France, he from Prescott, Arizona, he came here after the war to make a life in business and public service, here, especially in the Tulsa region. He was elected your last territorial governor, and I was officially in charge of appointing him. And I wonder if you realize that your fellow member, Mr. Douglas Francis Collins, is his grandson. And I'm delighted to see Mr. Collins here today. Bully. Bully. Well, now, I returned. We were quarantined at Camp Wyckoff on Long Island. The Republicans sent an emissary to see if I'd be willing to run for the governorship that fall, and I agreed to do so. Can you imagine when my campaign train that fall of 1898 pulled into upstate New York villages? Out from the cattle car would pour rough riders, wearing uniform, riding horses, shooting their weapons and blowing a bugle. And in one upstate New York village, a Rough Rider sergeant introduced me to the audience thusly. He said, "In Cuba, Colonel Roosevelt led us like sheep to slaughter. And if you elect him governor, he will so lead you." Despite the implications of the endorsement, I was elected governor and began to fight for what I called a square deal, eventually calling for the taxation of certain public monopolies in New York, like the elevated train and the gas company. Well, that was too much square dealing for the Republican bosses. They decided to send me away to a place from which a man might never be heard from again, the Vice Presidency of the United States. I was unanimously nominated to join President McKinley's re-election ticket at the convention in Philadelphia in 1900. I say unanimously, every vote but one, my own. I said I would rather be a history professor than be vice president. But once nominated, told my fellow Republicans, use me to your fullest. I campaigned 16,000 miles by train, mostly in the western states, while President McKinley famously campaigned on his front porch in Canton, Ohio, the campaign coming to him. And when we were elected, President McKinley's political mentor, Senator Mark Hanna of Cleveland, Ohio, told his fellow Republicans, "Don't you realize what you've done? That madman cowboy is but one life from the presidency." And how sadly prophetic his words. President McKinley was shot and killed in Buffalo, New York in September of 1901. I became your 26th president, and I do think I probably did the job a bit differently than many of my predecessors before. I was not simply a rubber stamp for Congress. I believed in the affirmative authority of the federal government and of our president, much in the tradition of Lincoln and Jackson in that regard. And what fun we had in the Roosevelt household. 6 children, most of them small, though Mrs. Roosevelt claimed she reared 7 children at the White House, and that I was her worstest and most terrible child. I may need to return again to tell you stories of boxing and wrestling in the White House, of 6 children who, the head White House usher said of the Roosevelt years, it was no time for a person with a nervous constitution to be working at the White House. I was elected in my own right in 1904 by the largest electoral vote and popular vote plurality in our history in a contested election to that date. And when I took the oath of office in March of 1905, unlike the emergency circumstance in which I did so in Buffalo in 1901, at that time when I didn't have a Bible, when I stood in a private residence in a borrowed suit of clothes, in 1905 I had a great inaugural parade and festivities. When I took the oath of office, I had my own suit. I had on my right hand a ring given to me by Secretary of State John Hay, he who in his youth had been private secretary to Lincoln. The ring was a locket ring, and in the locket of that ring a clipping of Abraham Lincoln's hair taken from his deathbed. I held that right hand aloft as I took the oath of office, my left hand upon the family Bible, open to James 1:22. Be thou not only hearers of the word, but doers of the word also. And I can tell you, I know of no greater fellowship of the doers than Rotary. Rotary was founded in 1905 during my presidential administration. And what a legacy of service those Chicago Rotarians have in the thousands of members across the world now. You know your history again. The first public service project of that Chicago Rotary Club was to purchase a horse for an itinerant preacher whose horse had died. The second public service project of that Chicago Rotary Club was to build the first public toilets in Chicago. And Rotarians have been bringing relief to the people of the world ever since. It was in 1905 that I made a tour through Oklahoma. I had gone to the Rough Rider reunion in San Antonio, and on my return I just had to do some hunting with Jack Wolfman Abernathy, a man who I'd heard from friends could capture a wolf with his bare hands by thrusting his hand down into the wolf's throat when the wolf made his charge. I saw it with my own eyes hunting with the greyhounds in southwestern Oklahoma, where we were joined by my friend Quanah Parker, the great Comanche chief. So it is a delight to be back in Oklahoma, and I must say, I like what you've done with the place. I especially like that you are balancing these great needs for conservation and utilization of our natural resources. There is nothing, it's akin to the Panama Canal. What we are achieving in energy independence for the future of our country is akin to what the Panama Canal achieved for our sovereignty a century ago. So for those of you involved in that important industry, I say bully for you. And I hope that I might see you this summer in the Badlands of North Dakota, where I hang my hat and celebrate nearby my namesake national park, Theodore Roosevelt National Park. Before I leave today, I must share with you that I acknowledge that time and history march on. Perhaps I'm no longer known for this great legacy of success and achievement. It was indeed while I had toured Europe in 1910 that I accepted my Nobel Peace Prize, given to me and the American people for settling the Russo-Japanese War. While I toured Europe, I spoke at the great universities. I made a speech at the University of Paris, the Sorbonne, in April 1910. I recommend the speech to you in its entirety. It's called Citizenship in a Republic. Many of the admonitions I have there are just the sort of thing that Rotarians wear on their heart and commit when they say the four-way test. I also share with you that it delights me to know that these words, in brief, are stenciled below decks on the USS Theodore Roosevelt. The Navy calls that great nuclear aircraft carrier the Big Stick, as in the old African proverb I was wont to quote, "Speak softly and carry a big stick, you will go far." I also understand that Coach Harbaugh used these words in the locker room as he rallied the Ravens to the Super Bowl championship. I'm even told that a small portion of these words today are tattooed somewhere on young Miley Cyrus. I'm really not quite sure what to think about that. But I share these words of encouragement with you, good Rotarians, for I know that you are engaged in doing good deeds. Well, of course, this is America. No good deed goes unpunished. Certainly no good deed goes without its second guessing, its Monday morning quarterbacking. Persist in your good deeds. America needs them greatly. And when you are criticized, take encouragement from the words that I shared with the French a century ago and with you here in Tulsa today. Remember, it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man and today to the woman who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who knows the great devotions, the great enthusiasms, who spends himself in a worthy cause, and who in the end, at the best, knows the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, that his name shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Oh, good citizens, we've all known victory, we've all known defeat. We're all human. We all prefer the former over the latter. But I've shared some of these stories with you, and especially the stories that I share with the school children of overcoming my asthma, of overcoming the terrible tragedies of my young life, the death of my father when I was at Harvard, the death of my wife, my first wife, and my mother on the same day beneath the same roof when I was a young man of 25. Why, even indeed in politics, as a young man, I ran for the mayorship of New York. I came in third out of 3. That's last place. What if I had given up on politics and public service after such a humiliating defeat in my home city? I would have never been your president, fighting for the square deal. No, indeed, you know, into each and every one of our lives there will be hardship and tragedy and defeat. Life will knock you down. Your duty to yourself, to your family, your community, indeed your nation, is that when life does knock you down, you're to get back up again, dust yourself off and get back into the fight for life. And now you may say, Colonel Roosevelt, you're preaching. As one senator said, coming to the White House, I said, Senator, you're right. And the presidency is a bully pulpit, too. Well, you here have a bully pulpit at Rotary. It's my pleasure as we come towards conclusion to acknowledge that there is a legacy for me that is perhaps not a legacy of success, but a legacy of failure, and probably the legacy by which I'm best remembered. But I'll return first to 1912, that campaign. Perhaps you know the story. In October of 1912, I was campaigning in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I left the Hotel Gilpatrick and ascended an open-air automobile to go and speak to thousands awaiting at the auditorium. As I ascended the automobile and turned and waved to the crowd outside the hotel, a madman reached into the automobile and shot me at close range with a .38 caliber. The bullet pierced my overcoat and my folded speech, my steel eyeglass case, lodged deep in my chest and knocked me down in the automobile in which I was riding. I first stood and made sure that no vigilante justice was done to the madman that shot me. But then, being a hunter and a former soldier, I knew to spit into my palm and to check my spittle. There was no blood in my spittle. My lung was not punctured. It was but a mere flesh wound. I refused medical attention. I demanded to go and make my speech to the thousands awaiting at the auditorium. I climbed upon the stage. I pulled my jacket to the side. I showed the audience my bloody blouse. I said, you must bear with me. You may not understand. I've just been shot. But it takes more than a bullet to kill a bull moose. And I spoke for 80 minutes with a bullet in my chest. And right now, President Keith is wondering what sort of gun it will take to get me to stop hollering at the Rotarians today. I do come to conclusion, and as I do so, I ask my dear friend, Mr. Verheller. Mr. Verheller, if you'll join me up here. Delighted to see you. And, I love the bandana and the cowboy hat. I am perhaps no longer best known for the legacy of success, but instead, I'm perhaps best known for the legacy of a failed bear hunt in Onward, Mississippi in 1902, when I refused to shoot a wounded and tied bear. The story of that refusal spread throughout the country. The cartoonist Clifford Berryman, hearing that story, drew a cartoon of that refusal, called it Drawing the Line in Mississippi. And when I returned to the White House, I received a letter from the Mictum family. Mrs. Mictum in her letter, and she and her family, eventually the Ideal Toy Company, asking permission to make a stuffed bear and to name it after me. I wrote back, I said, you may go ahead and do so, but I don't think it will help your sales very much at all. I wonder if any of you have known the love and comfort of what then was called Teddy's bear. And if I may, this particular little fellow, he's been traveling with me from the Bakken in North Dakota. He's rather tired of traveling, the campaign pace that we've got. This teddy bear is going to stay here with one of you Rotarians, and with the assistance of Mr. Verheller, good to see you, sir.
Nice to meet you, President.
We're going to auction this teddy bear for the benefit of Polio Plus. There are so many reasons why we need to put our shoulder to the wheel. We are this close, and have you not heard the challenging news to know that polio is back in Syria, that healthcare workers are being targeted? Let us let them know that the Tulsa Rotarians are in the fight for Polio Plus. So, Mr. Verheller, I'll show the bear, you take the bids.
All right, the auction's on, and how many dollars, please? And anybody get $500 for it? 500. May I hear 5?
I like where he starts.
500 in the back. May I hear 6? I bid 5, want to be 607. I bid 6, you want to be 7.
For Polio
I
Plus.
bid 6, you want to be 700. I want to be 7.
A Rough Rider teddy bear.
7, want to be 7.
Bully.
I bid 600. May I hear 7, please? Anyone give 7? 700, anybody? 7 and 8. 800 now 9. I bid 8,
Delightful.
you want to be
Bully.
9? I'm at 8. You want to be $900? Want to be 9 and 199? Do you want to do it? $900? Want to be 9?
Bully.
And I've sold him $800. Brendan Mellenkine is a buyer. Thank
Tremendous,
you,
tremendous, tremendous. Wonderful. Bully. Bully. Thank you, Mr. Verheller. Rotarians, thank you. God bless your work. We'll see you down the trail. Bully. A real pleasure. Thank you. Bully. Bully. Thank you so very much. Bully. Thank you. Bully. God bless you, Rotarians. Thank you so much. Thank you kindly.
I must tell you, he's really fun to ask questions of, but does anybody want to ask some questions, or do you need to go home, or what do you want to do? I do want to tell you, we have a book that will go to Celia Clinton, and I need you to sign this, Exploring the Titanic with Teddy Roosevelt in Scuba Gear.
Delightful. May I share with you my military aide, Archibald Butt, a graduate of the University of the South, an institution that I'm associated with in this real life, living in Sewanee now. Archibald Butt was military aide for Taft as well. Taft made him take some time off in Europe as the 1912 campaign approached. Archibald Butt went down on the Titanic. It was said that he was the man who told the band to play Nearer, My God, to Thee. It was also, of course, Archibald Butt and others who, for the first time in our history in a sea disaster, shouted out, "Women and children first." A gentleman and a patriot to the end. A delight to know that this book will go to the children. Thank you. I will sign.
All right. So do you guys want to ask just maybe 2 questions?
I'd be happy to. Anything at all? Nothing too personal,
Tom?
nothing too obscure. Remind me, sir, would you stand and remind me your family name?
My name is Tom, Colonel.
Byers.
Mr. Myers.
You went on an expedition in South America with your son, one that I understand you almost did not come back from. Can you comment briefly?
And in brief, the trip is known as the River of Doubt. I recommend the book by Candace Millard. It was 1913. It was my last chance to be a boy, 55 years old. Colonel Rondon of the Brazilian Army had discovered a river that had never been mapped or explored before, hence the name, the Rio do Vida, in Portuguese, the River of Doubt, for they knew not where it went. I was touring South America on a speaking tour, and the Brazilian government invited me to lead this expedition with Colonel Rondon down the River of Doubt, and Kermit was working in the mining industry in South America at the time. He joined me on this trip. Now, we thought we would hunt for food as we had in Africa, but the jungle was so tremendously thick and only snakes and monkeys thereabout, making themselves quite scarce. We were starving. Our rations had been lost in the river. I lost 60 pounds. I dashed my leg against some rocks trying to save some of our heavy dugout canoes. I developed a malarial fever. Now, Mr. Myers, on every expedition I ever undertook, I always took with me enough morphine to take my own life. In case of a terrible gun accident or a bear mauling, I did not want to be a fatal burden to my party. And this trip down the River of Doubt was the closest I ever came to taking that fatal dose. I lay for 2 days in fever and delirium in the bottom of a canoe as the expedition remained still, much to its own peril. I recited over and over again in my fever a favorite line from Coleridge. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree. Mr. Myers, after 2 days of that, I would have shot me. But my son Kermit said, Father, I'm going to take you out of this jungle alive or dead, and it will be marginally easier to do so if you remain alive. With those words, Kermit saved my life. We were successful in completing our expedition. When I returned to Washington, D.C., I showed the map of the river at the National Geographic Society. And the Brazilian government, to show their pleasure, they renamed the Rio do Vida the Rio Roosevelt. The locals call it the Rio Teodoro. Glad to remember that fine story. Bully.
Thank you.
Delightful. Wonderful. We've got one last question here.
Okay.
Sir, if you would, remind me your name again, sir. Mr. Holmes, please. The floor is yours. Delightful. There's a delightful book out now. If you've got a football fan in the family, you might get them John Miller's The Big Scrum, How Teddy Roosevelt Saved Football. I didn't play football myself. My vision wasn't good. I liked those close-up sports of boxing and wrestling. but I was glad that all 4 of my boys played on their own 11 at Groton or at Harvard or elsewhere. And when, in 1905, I called a conference at the White House with Walter Camp, the coach at Yale, and with other football coaches, I said, gentlemen, football is on trial. Over 15 young men each year were being greatly maimed or killed on the gridirons of college and semi-pro football. I said, football is on trial, and you need to come up with rules for the safety of the students, or football may be made illegal, as President Eliot had done so at my own Harvard. Now, those men went out and held conferences and came up with rules for the safety of the students, and history knows this is the beginning of what today we call the National Collegiate Athletic Association. So I hope that when you're out there cheering on your team on Saturday, you might remember that the Rough Rider played just a brief and little role in that wonderful endeavor. If you get the NFL channel, next month you might see this face if you watch the documentary on the centennial of the forward pass, a little something that I enjoyed retelling with NFL Films in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, just this fall. In conclusion, I'm sometimes asked if I'm kin to Franklin Roosevelt. Of course, 5th cousins, once removed on my father's side. 5 generations before me, our forebears were brothers. But I wonder if you realize that Eleanor Roosevelt was my niece, my brother Elliot's daughter. Elliot died as a young man. I gave Eleanor away at her March 17th, 1905 wedding to Franklin in New York City, where I was able to thank Franklin for keeping the name in the family. Though, cousin, I think some of the family members were glad that the money stayed in the family as well. Godspeed, good Rotarians. A delight to see you all. Fully. Thank you so much. Really wonderful. Thank you. Thanks again.
Oh, boy. Upcoming program. Please wear orange next week. Put it on the calendar. Wear orange. Burns Hargis will be here from OSU. And the following week after that will be Lieutenant General Bruce Litchfield from Tinker Air Force Base. And we have some mystery Rotarians. We also have a couple of witches in the back. Thank you for that. We had some mystery Rotarians dressed up for Halloween. And, well, that one's too easy. There's Sarge. That one's easy. What else have we got? Who is that? John? No? Tony Oliva, I think, is under that. I think. Yeah, they're great costumes. Who's that? Tony Oliva. Okay, very good. Thank you, Eric. And guess who this is? That is Elaine Moore Jones. That was pretty good. And I love this one. You guys get who that one is? Ron Butler. Woohoo! All right. So those are our mystery Rotarians. Go out and have a great week. We'll see you back here dressed in orange.
Wonderful. A lot of fun. Thank you so much. Really glad to be here with such a wonderful group.
I'm going to be with about 6 of them right now.
Are you? Right.